day?
Yes.
Oh, snap. This is the last one. Are you psyched for networking? Yes. Are you psyched for the session?
Yes.
We have 2 minutes, so make sure give everyone time who wants to What is your favorite session so far? Anybody? Anyone like a session? Want to share? Okay, cool.
The one about the sports.
Yeah. The keynote.
Yeah, the keynote, what is analytics in sports.
Oh, yeah.
The predictive and the fashion.
Yeah, sweet. Welcome to today's session. We're going to talk about a little bit about data-driven culture and kind of the backstage and what you would engage with outside of kind of what you read in the news and whatnot, and then the final results, right? So I'm new to this. So you are the first data scientist of your organization. Is this a circumstance that any of you are in right now? You're the first, you're the lead. There's no, here you are. Raise it high, confident. Yay! So, are some of you who aspire to do this? Yep, okay. Very, 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 very ambitious of you all. So, this talk will be a little bit bringing in some technical and non-technical aspects about being the first data scientist. And we only have 20 minutes, so your journey will be long and hard. You've clearly proven your skills at this point. You've practiced for a long time. Maybe you want to take a leadership role now. So this will be kind of the whole kind of big picture the forest and not the trees. But I'm confident that you guys have had a good day because there was a lot of really detailed presentations, like the sports one, like Netflix, that got you understanding and knowing the models that are out there. All right. So as the popularity of data science is increasing, there's more organizations who've never had data scientists before want to hire one, and start to think about how these people play roles in their organization. Who is familiar with this meme? Okay, so they've used this for a lot of different roles, like different data scientists. So these are some common misconceptions, like my friends think I do this, what my mom thinks I do, and so you can use a lot of different pictures, right? I can use appropriate or not appropriate pictures, so I chose these. What society thinks I do, what my boss thinks I do, what I think I do. I like this one because I think I'm being a mad scientist all the time on my computer, and what I actually do. So a little bit of humor in there for you about data scientists. But the takeaway here is that as data science, the term becomes more popular, and so does the misconceptions. Most people who will hire you might not even understand what a data scientist is and what you do. So it's your role to set those expectations and guide everyone in the organization of what you are and what you really do. So a little bit about me. My name is Pauline Chow. I am currently a consultant and the lead instructor for the new Data Science Immersive at General Assembly. It's a 3-month immersive / boot camp that General Assembly is trying to do in Santa Monica and then next semester in downtown Los Angeles. I worked at a few startups, including a digital publishing startup and a fintech in Los Angeles. I'm still paying off my student loan, so I'll mention that I have a BS in statistics and I went to law school. And then I took GA again and transitioned into data science. And I'm finishing up my master's in computer science. So I like learning, but I think all data scientists like learning as well. So we're in good company. So back to the point, you are the first or lead data scientist in your organization. And some context I have for talking about this is when I was at a digital media startup. And these are some questions you might ask yourself and survey the situation. Later on I'll show my blog link, but I write some articles about being a first data scientist on whenthereisdata.com. And so everyone has a different context. My context is looking at a business or a few businesses where their core competency is not technical. So they do not have a technical culture in this case study that I have. And so data becomes a really good place to bridge a lot of gaps in expectations, to talk about a lot of where the business is going. You also want to ask what the state of your organization is in and when they're asking you to come in. Are you coming in when your organization is doing well or when they're not doing well? So in this context, profits were steady and they're adding digital products, so that's why they want a data scientist. Also, what tools are available to you? And as we talked about all day, I think a lot of really awesome open source tools. So are these available to you? They were to me, and I was able to pick any tool that I wanted, which was awesome. But not everyone has that capability. We'll talk a bunch about how you're going to map your influence map. And so I was reporting to the VP of marketing at the time. So a lot of my direct and indirect influences was conversion, how are users interacting with new products, etc. And I was the first data scientist. And I think I talked to someone else who, in this audience, Wendy, who was saying that she's kind of in the same boat too, where your previous person dealing with data was not a data scientist. And so understanding the context and expectations there is important. So why should you care? So why should you care about data culture? Because data culture will affect how you do your work every day. Here are some key drivers that I thought were important in maximally integrating data culture within business speak, how people interact with you, and how people use the information that you give them. One is creating an Agile data stack, which I'll go over. Influence expectations, effectively implement solutions, and maximize communication and impact. Your Agile data stack, to you, it's the way that you work every day. It's what you're spending your money on. It's what you're using to present your information. It's crucial to integrate a sense of flexibility, iterative nature, and scalability so that your data practices will culminate throughout the organization, permeate throughout the organization, and encourage an agile-oriented mindset in your team as well as the rest of your organization. You want to be able to influence and talk about what people expect from you and what you expect from others. And then you also want to use that roadmap, that sort of blueprint that you created, to have an effective roadmap for implementation of solutions and products. And of course, communication, constantly, always, and it should be a core part of your strategy as a data scientist. Here's some guiding verbs. I sectioned off the rest of my talk into these verbs, so they're action-oriented steps that you can take in providing guidance and structure to being the first data scientist. Because likely you will not be in a kind of a structured organization where they'll know exactly what the next step is. So what are you trying to hear? Does anyone have some insights on, as being the first data scientist, what is the first thing that have people asked you to do for them? I know there's a couple of hands there. What's the first thing they ask you to do? Maybe write reports. Maybe write reports. Maybe what else?
Build
help them.
dashboards. Build dashboards.
Yes, build dashboards. Yes, that's a big one. Okay, so what are you trying to hear? And this is a little bit, this is going to be a little bit not, it could be straightforward like this. One is that you will hear explicit goals. This is what you might see in your data requirements, your documentation, your project management, which is a hat that you typically have to wear. These are structured, logical, and safe conversations that you have that you can share openly with everybody. And then you have the really interesting ones, which are implicit goals and expectations that you cannot necessarily ask people right away. You have to figure this out. And this in itself is a very soft skill, but very interesting how it works in an organization, especially if it's bigger than a startup. If you have more than like 15, 20 people, this becomes a really interesting kind of like, you can call it politics, you can call it emotional intelligence, but this aspect of being a data scientist, especially when I teach my students and I tell them about the job that they're going to come up to next, you most likely won't be a lead data scientist without some life skill. So sometimes transitioning from another role in which you had to deal with a lot of implicit things helps you be a good leader in this space. Okay, so next is implement. How to approach your blueprint for data-driven or data-informed culture. So how many people are at organizations that say they are data-driven? So is it safe to say maybe 50%? Okay, so keeping those hands up if you really think those organizations are actually data-driven. So if they're not, you can put them down. Okay, there's a little bit less. Okay, so this is a very popular word to use in the business sector. Everyone wants to use it, but not very many people can implement. And you can't really tell unless you're in the organization. So there's multiple approaches, but there's two approaches you can take that I'm focusing on when thinking about your staff. And this is important for the first data scientist because likely within your first 3 months, it's only going to be you. So you have to churn out a really rapid amount of work, also be a leader, also organize and reorganize everything. So this is important for you to make a good first impression. So the first way that I'm advocating for Agile by architecture is if you are concerned with where data is coming from or going to, if you're concerned with how things are connected, I'm also assuming you might have power, you're empowered to change things in the organization. You are able to coordinate with your engineering, your technical team on how to use their current technology as well. So, if you have some power to, like the Netflix, they said all engineers are able to drop tables. So if you're in that type of organization, then this might work for you. This is a sample of essentially what I built for the media company that I was at, and with a lot of help in terms of support from the technical team. So starting from this point, there's no way that one person can build this, not in 3 months, not in maybe even a year, but because of where data science is going, you are able to abstract some of that work by using SaaS and PaaS, so software as a service or platform as a service, and really give your work to the machines. I've used some of these tools, but not all of them. I don't work with any of these organizations. They don't pay me. But a really great help was using an open source tool developed by Spotify called Luigi. I think there was a talk on that today. To organize all the data that was streaming out from all the different sources. Let's see. The extract, transfer, load portion, there's a few organizations or products by Xplenty or Illuma or even Segment that helps you take things from S3 and pull them directly into your Redshift instance. There's a modeling sandboxes that allow you to keep track of your model so you don't have to, with documentation and commentary and ability to share your work with other people in your organization. So that's that. We chose a Redshift instance in here, and I was able to use Looker, so I think a pretty awesome, not open source tool. However, dashboards, like the gentleman said in the back, there's also some really good free ones that came out recently, like Airbnb has a free one that they've open sourced. And then, so if this is not possible for you, then you might want to think about creating an Agile Stack by process, by data science process. So, of course, there's many other steps we can incorporate in here, but in the big scheme of things, as a data scientist, you have to do all these to come up with a model or solution. You have to identify your problem. You have to get the data for the problem. And if you're the first data scientist, this is probably the most pain and suffering you'll have, but it'll be very rewarding, right? When you'll be the first one to have some information for your organization. You need to parse and mine that data and then build and deploy and probably present in the middle to your stakeholders. So if you're not able to have control over some of the more technical data layers, the more technical data layer portion of your organization, you just want to keep your eyes on the prize and look at your stack and your efficiency from this flow from this workflow. So more likely than not, in the blue, those are the sections you want to keep in-house. So you want to keep your problem statement, you creating the problem statement in-house. You will probably have to parse and mine some data that's not necessarily acquirable through different sources. So hopefully this is at a minimum. But there are some really, really interesting organizations that have data for you already, or that can take what I'm assuming already existing third-party sources in your organization and push it directly into your dashboard or your data warehouse. And then of course our favorite, IPython Jupyter notebooks have capabilities to automate a lot of this and to also be transitioned and turned into PowerPoint point presentations and dashboards as well. So you could also have this complete process here by workflow and by architecture completely in Python if you wanted to. But that of course takes a little bit of work, so the suggestions I had from those stacks are ways to make yourself one-person team or maybe two-person team as effective as possible. So collaborate. What metrics should you emphasize for teamwork? And so this is very dependent on your organization and where it's headed. And just like the questions I asked earlier, what state are you in? What are you trying to do? Who are you trying to impress? As an organization and as a data scientist. Is anyone willing to share 2 metrics from their organization that they consistently come around to? So does anyone use users? Any user-based metrics you want to share? Any, I have some, but any conversion-related metrics?
Your conversion to your page or to your funnel, okay, like your CTO, CRO, whatever.
Yep, true. Anyone else? Let's say, do you have any contract-related metrics? Any time-related metrics?
Average session length.
Okay, yes. So a lot of really good metrics. And just as long, the bottom line for this is just as long as if people care about a metric, and you can get people to care, then anything can go. Anything reasonable and logical. But just to highlight some from startups is, we think burn rate. This is not shared usually within an organization, but I think it'd be very interesting to do that because then people would understand certain types of urgencies that executives have that they don't understand. Customer acquisition is also one that is very investor-driven, could be an investor-driven metric, but also something that a company keeps their eyes on because it gives them information about market competitiveness, the viability of their products and services, and also how they're doing with market saturation. This, unfortunately, I think now is mainly housed in social media or social platforms like Google, Facebook. One of the fintechs I worked at was exclusively on Facebook, but they didn't want anyone to know. I think that's pretty much where everyone is, but the digital media place I was at was almost exclusively Facebook, but they also didn't want anyone to know either. So it's kind of interesting movement. There's also gross profit and revenue. So this is also not very shared super widely either, but it has to play into how the company is doing with or without external capital. And it can be gross profit by user, it can be gross profit by contract, but it's a very important business driver. Active users. Does anyone watch Silicon Valley? Okay, yeah, so it is interesting. But like from Silicon Valley, any one of these metrics could be doctored. So it's as important as your organization makes it. Churn rate and retention. So are people leaving, and when are they leaving? How are they leaving? So then I think it's really interesting when people leave in the beginning of acquisition. Sometimes it's not actually churn rate. It's that the organization or your product is not fulfilling something that person needs. So that's an important question to ask. But caring about how people interact and how people continually use your product is an important cultural aspect of this metric. Cumulative growth. And working at a bunch of startups, it is quite difficult to get out of the culture of short-term growth. So looking at and promoting a sustainable way of looking at long-term and short-term growth is important. Most startups will just talk about month-over-month, at this point in time, month-over-month growth. And a lot of investors will ask for explosive growth. They'll ask for 100% growth, 1,000% growth, but it's not necessarily sustainable. And then my last slide, there's response time. I don't think anyone uses this one, but I think it's important to have a handle on your team's response time in terms of bug fixes, technological improvements, product upgrades, and customer service, so that you are understanding whether internal staff is responding to what you're doing together as a team, and whether or not you're responding adequately to external forces. Customer lifetime value, you've seen that, but it's a very interesting culminating metric because it brings in the frequency of customer purchase, revenue per customer, acquisition costs, and it can have really interesting predictive qualities depending on what methods you use to calculate CLV. So after seeing those metrics, does anyone have other metrics that their organization is using?
I have a question,
Yeah,
actually.
sure.
And maybe if it's too long, you can wait till the end, but
Sure, go ahead.
I guess what I'm thinking about when I'm looking at response time, customer lifetime value, cumulative growth, et cetera, I'm thinking of data sources that are owned or managed by parties that may not be immediately interested in the development of a data-driven culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking, as my job as a data scientist, I'm gonna have to fight for information for my manager from somebody else, you know what I mean? And I was just wondering, do you have any tips on ways to kind of bridge that?
Yes. So keep that question.
Yeah, I'll hold on to it.
And then I have a slide on connecting the dots, and that might have a little bit of an answer. But if you feel like you need to fight a little bit, that's the feeling I had when I was when I was a first data scientist too. Had to fight and make the case. And sometimes you can do it with metrics. The interesting thing from Kyle's presentation, and he's back there, was he talked about the value of information. So being able to make the case of, if you gave this information, it will cost you this much money, but it'll give you this much ROI. It could be an interesting measure for someone to spend their time on. However, if that person is not technologically savvy or metrics driven, it might take a little bit of relationship development, where I talked about implicit goals and expectations. So you have to work on that relationship in a different way. Okay, and then but definitely re-ask the question. I think we're coming up to our 30 minutes soon. So how to align and connect the goals and expectations that you have and other people have for you. It's not a cop-out answer, but essentially your position of being the first data scientist, when you have people believe in you, that's why they hired you, you have the skills to implement tools, they're asking you to be a leader. So leadership is a topic in and of itself, but it's also a way for you to think about how you want to permeate what you're trying to do through the organization. So you might be fighting, but how can you have other people help fight for you as well? Can you develop advocates within each organization? So then, as an example, if someone from someone else's team doesn't like your work or doesn't care about your work, what if you develop people in their group that they care about and get that message to them? Make them your advocate, so they tell that person that you're fighting with that they need that. And so, the message doesn't always have to come from you. And so that's why also I think it's important to use dashboards as a way or other ways to democratize data, to get information so that other people could spread your very important message through the organization. And then it's important to connect the dots. So the human component of data scientists, and I think when people tell me what they look for in a lead, is communication, is talking about your issue, is getting people to understand about it in a non-technical way. So yeah, you can create your stack, yeah, you can write reports, yeah, you can implement models that tell them how to maximize their CLV. But can you get people to understand what you're doing, to make a good first impression, to translate that blueprint into a business roadmap that people understand? Are you able to establish measures for success and keep talking about that? Even just in a teaching capacity, most of the time it takes people at least to hear something 3 times before they actually hear it. So I know in a business setting, when people are not in the learning mindset, or maybe don't have a growth mindset, how many times do you repeat something for someone to kind of catch on? So, that is very, very important. So it's important for, especially in the business sector, for some people to have expectations that are met, to have consistent communication, so they know that every month, you're going to tell them something, or every 2 months or 3 months, you give them an update on what you've been doing, the impact of that. So, keeping in mind, I would say that's very, very important in the beginning of your time there to set a roadmap right away. What do you want to do within this time frame for people? And then another learning that I had that was really important was how to allocate time effectively for myself and for the team that I was developing. And it was the paradigm of business as usual. What were they doing before? What do I need to be doing? And then communicate that. And so in this perspective, you're taking on a kind of project or product manager role, but I think that should be expected. And then, of course, grow your team. So as you're making the case for data as a resource, you also have to make the case for team members if necessary. And it kind of depends on what they're asking you to do, right? So just an illustration of people that you might want to be added to your organization over time. And of course, that's a little bit of a different discussion. But I wanted to tie everything back together and 2 more slides, and then you've got full networking opportunity. And so I think the takeaway is to create an actionable, agile data science and analytics stack. And I think this is key to success because it allows you to both do your work, for you to communicate, and also for you to reinforce, the important ideas that you are trying to communicate, to yourself every day too. So agile is being flexible, scalable, and open to change. And that's it. So thank you for attending this discussion on your stack and being the first data scientist. This is my contact information on Twitter, and that's my blog that I sometimes will write posts about data science careers. Students ask me some interesting questions about being a data scientist, so I post that information too. So if you're new to data science, this might be an interesting place for you to have a dialogue, and email me with questions. And then I think we have a few minutes for questions too, so anyone have questions? Did I answer your question, sir?
Yeah, I think so. I guess whenever I think about, I'm in web services, so I can get all the data I need about like server response time, user logins, traffic, all that. But then when I think about tying that to financial information, that's totally outside of my domain. So it's like there's a wall there. Let's say if I wanted to correlate, okay, how much did we spend on what was the customer acquisition? How much did we spend on that last month, marketing, et cetera, compared to what the website traffic looked like, and pull some reasonable data out of there. I can look at the web traffic, but today I can't look at the financial information.
Right.
So that's the hurdle or the wall that I think about whenever I think about the.
Does your company use CLV, the customer lifetime value?
I'm sure they do.
Okay.
I'm sure it's tracked in Salesforce, but again, I don't have access to the Salesforce data.
I don't know. I actually don't know if Salesforce has that capability.
Yeah, Salesforce doesn't have it.
Yeah, so,
Okay, yeah.
so basically, if you make them, like for example, if you make them really want CLV and send them some really interesting articles, maybe they'll give you that information.
Okay.
If you're marketing department, you don't have that. So
Marketing?
you need to connect with your marketing.
Okay.
So that's one thing you left out from your people to engage.
Oh, yeah. Marketing.
Yes.
Oh, I have researcher. No, but no, that's
That's
okay, cool.
it.
I will definitely add marketing.
Very important, because
Yes.
if you're trying to get your management to sign into that, marketing is your key. I'm in marketing.
Oh, yeah. In this case study, my boss was the VP of marketing, so yes.
Yeah.
I was on that mindset.
You want to get your marketing person on board with you.
Yes, totally, agree. Anybody else have questions, concerns, complaints? Okay. Well, thank you for